Hello viewers, it all came crashing down after 11 long years. Under the harsh glow of studio lights and the softer glow of her own living room lamps, Kandi Burruss finally said the words she'd been holding inside for months. Her marriage to Todd was over. That alone would have shaken fans. But what shattered them, and her, was the confession that followed. With tears in her eyes and her voice cracking, she revealed that the man she thought she knew had been living a secret double life, with a second marriage and a hidden family that she had never been told about. The world gasped. How do you walk away from a love story that was never fully real? And how long had the truth been hiding in plain sight? To understand the weight of that betrayal, you have to start long before the reality shows and red carpets. Kandi was a girl from College Park, Georgia, raised by a mother who knew struggle and refused to bow to it. She learned early that nothing would be handed to her and that love, like success, could be fleeting. Music became the language she trusted most. When people disappointed her, melodies didn't. When doors closed, writing songs opened new ones. But even as she chased her dreams, there was a quiet fear in her heart, that giving her trust to the wrong person could destroy everything. Her talent wasn't just good, it was undeniable. As a teen, she stepped into the spotlight with Escape, and suddenly the girl from Atlanta was topping charts, touring the world, and writing hits that would define a generation. Later, as a Grammy-winning songwriter and a star of the Real Housewives of Atlanta, she built something rare in the entertainment world, a name that meant business, endurance, and hustle. She had the career, the accolades, the respect. But inside, she still longed for something simple, a partner who would stand beside her, not behind her, someone who saw Kandi the person, not just Kandi the brand. That's when Todd came into the picture. Behind the scenes, low-key, steady, he seemed like the balance she needed. Their chemistry grew slowly at first, then all at once. They laughed at the same jokes, shared the same grind, and turned their connection into a partnership that felt unshakable. They blended families, launched businesses, and stood side by side in front of millions who believed in their love story. At Bravo events, at reunions, at interviews, she spoke of him with gratitude and pride. To everyone watching, they weren't just a couple, they were proof that love could survive the spotlight. But behind the fame, the truth was far darker. For months, tiny inconsistencies tugged at her intuition. A trip that didn't quite make sense. A call he stepped outside to take. A quiet shift in his energy she couldn't explain. Kandi brushed it off, telling herself that doubt was the enemy of love. She had defended this man, chosen him over rumors, over outsiders, even over her own discomfort. But then came the moment that changed everything. Confronted with evidence she could no longer ignore, Kandi discovered what she once would have called impossible. Todd had a secret second marriage, and a hidden family woven into a life she knew nothing about. The man she had shared a home, a bed, and dreams with had been carrying an entire other reality just out of frame. And this was only the beginning of the heartbreak. When she finally spoke it out loud, it wasn't in a dramatic screaming match. It was quieter, heavier. In a raw, emotional breakdown, Kandi admitted that she had suspected something was off, but she never imagined this. She talked about nights spent staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations, wondering if she was losing her mind. She confessed she had wanted to tell the world for so long, but stayed silent, for her kids, for her image, for the hope that maybe there was an explanation that made it all less cruel. It felt like my whole life had been built on a lie, she whispered. Like the foundation of everything I believed in just cracked. But no one knew what was coming next. The divorce papers were one thing. The emotional fallout was another. On the outside, Kandi tried to keep her composure. She wasn't dragging Todd's name, wasn't firing off petty posts or turning interviews into battlegrounds. That wasn't her style. Instead, she chose to tell the truth, plainly and painfully, without theatrics. She admitted she felt blindsided, betrayed, and humiliated, especially knowing that while she was publicly praising him at events like BravoCon, he'd been carrying secrets that could destroy her. The craziness of it all wasn't just what he had done, but the fact that she had been living this nightmare in silence, smiling for cameras while her heart fell apart behind the scenes. Her lowest moments weren't the headlines, they were the quiet hours when the kids were asleep and the house suddenly felt too big, too empty. She replayed 11 years of memories, now tainted by what she had learned. Were the laughs real? The anniversaries? The promises? Or were they just scenes in a carefully managed performance? She admitted she wasn't ready for the truth when it finally arrived. It hit her like a wave, stealing her breath, leaving her standing in the ruins of a life she thought she understood. It seemed like the end, until fate intervened. Because in the middle of the wreckage, something unexpected happened. Kandi chose not to let this betrayal become the headline of her life. She could have turned the breakup into a spectacle, but instead, she focused on survival. On healing. On her children. She spoke openly about the pain, but she also spoke about boundaries, about rebuilding, about choosing peace over payback. Even as she and Todd navigated the complexities of co-parenting, she made it clear, this wasn't about revenge. This was about reclaiming herself. What shocked fans even more was the strange duality of the aftermath. Publicly, Todd still showed her respect, congratulating her on major milestones, calling her the GOAT, even as their marriage lay in pieces. It confused people. How could the man who had hurt her so deeply still stand behind her success? How could there be no screaming matches, no social media wars, just a complicated, quiet attempt to coexist for the sake of their kids? The situation wasn't simple. It wasn't clean. It was real. As time moved forward, Kandi did what she's always done, she worked. She created. She evolved. She admitted she wasn't the same woman who first fell in love with Todd, and she didn't want to be. She had learned too much. About love. About lies. About her own strength. I'm not going to be a victim in my own story, she said. I get to decide what happens next. Those weren't just words, they were a line in the sand. And so, her life entered a new chapter. One where betrayal wasn't the end, but the beginning of a different kind of freedom. She poured herself into her career, into her children, into her own happiness. Todd's silence, his absence of public defense or attack, became its own strange punctuation mark on their story. Maybe one day he'll share his side. Maybe he won't. But for Kandi, that's no longer the point. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a secret marriage or a double life. It was a story about a woman who had to watch the version of her life she thought was true fall apart, and still found the courage to stand up inside the mess. She didn't just survive the scandal. She transformed through it.